Hi, my name's Caitlin. I'm going to be talking about the brochure that was made for our group. I'm just going to talk about what we put on the brochure, why we put it there, and how that leads into our alternative policy. So yeah, I'll just jump right into it. Our brochure is two-sided. The front side really goes into detail about the current social policy for Indigenous rights, which is discussed earlier in our PowerPoint, which you've probably seen by the time you get to my video. So we really chose to focus on the Savannah Act, and so the front side of the brochure has what the Savannah Act is, what were the requirements for the Savannah Act, and kind of goes into bullet points about that. And then I really made it a point to show and represent on this front side the unintended effects of the Savannah Act, because I think that's what leads us into our alternative policy and plan of action. So I have some of the unintended effects that are listed are like lawmakers not recognizing that there would be a large number of victims, lack of resources within the communities, and resources for Native Americans are not as accessible and as available as planned. So those are listed on the front side, and then it kind of goes into the alternative policy and kind of starts to discuss that on the front side as well. So our alternative policy is to amend the Savannah Act to incorporate a collaborative field-based research diversity training, incorporating two-spirit individuals. And when I say two-spirit individuals, I kind of want to expand on that. To make that specifically clear on the brochure, we have this quote that says, "Two-spirit is a role that existed in a Native American, First Nations, Indigenous tribe for genderqueer, gender fluid, and gender nonconforming tribal members." So we have that listed on the front page, so it's super clear, so there's no confusion there. And then going on to the back of the brochure, this is when we really start to dig into our alternative policy and go more in depth into it. So we really emphasize the effectiveness of diversity training and how important that is. So I have some quotes listed about diversity training. We got this one quote from an article that talked about police officers explaining why diversity in law enforcement is important. And so this quote says, "Diversity in the force ensures that we are prepared for these cultural differences and helps us avoid unfortunate misunderstandings." So I think that's really important because that just shows how important diversity training is, because these police officers are going into so many different situations and so many different communities, and they need to be trained on diversity so that they can handle the situation well and not lead to unfortunate misunderstandings like the quote states. So we definitely emphasize diversity training as one of our main points, but we also emphasize the fact that we need the funding for it. So I think it's important to emphasize this as well, because especially right now with like defunding the police, and that statement going around, and then there's just not a ton of extra funding for police departments right now. So we make it a point to say that it's essential that the funding's there for these programs and these diversity trainings to take place within police departments. And then we also just kind of talk about the two-spirit individual, like I had mentioned on the front page, and we have this one saying on our brochure, which I think is important, so I'm just going to quote it right now. It says, "It's important for two-spirit individuals to hold significant roles in social structures. This will lead to more diversity, which will create more understanding of tribes within law enforcement." So that's essentially what our brochure entails. I just kind of want to emphasize again that the front page of our brochure really focuses on the current social policy, which is the Savannah Act, while also mentioning the unintended effects of the Savannah Act, which then leads us into our alternative policy and plan of action, which it mentions it on the front page, but the back of the brochure is really where we go more in depth. Thank you.